Tim Pool just dropped brutal truths on Konstantin Kisin and left the table silent.
The Constitution does not and never did protect free speech.
From exposing unconstitutional power grabs by Democrat attorney generals to calling out the media's double standard on political violence.
The left doesn't do that. They firebomb your buildings. Or they just don't show up. Or they try to get you fired. They swat you. They harass you.
Tim explained why so many are abandoning the left and revealing why it's becoming more of a cult. Let's get into it.
And I can say, look, the right, they're completely insane. Look at these nutbags on Twitter.
You'd be wrong.
Really?
Yeah. RFK Jr., former liberal. Tulsi Gabbard, former liberal. Donald Trump, former liberal. Elon Musk, former liberal. Colin Wright, former liberal. Tim Pool, former liberal. How is it that Charlie Kirk, Christian conservative with one of the largest conservative platforms, invites moderate pro-choice Tim Pool onto his stage for his biggest event of the year to discuss those views to the public? On the left, what do you think would happen if you went and opposed their views at a public forum? You'd be threatened with violence. And I'm not saying literally everyone all the time, but booking liberals to come on my show or any other show, people in this
we
space,
have the same problem.
Yeah.
they refuse to do it.
They don't want to talk.
Back in, I think it was 2018.
But George, we should say why as well. They're scared of their own side.
Yeah.
It's a cult. So I can sit in front of a libertarian like Dave Smith, who's going to rant about how Israel is bad, and Charlie Kirk at the same time, and we leave with beers in our hands, smiles on our faces. And Dave will say, Charlie, I really do appreciate it. I think you do good work. I know we disagree. The left doesn't do that. They firebomb your buildings. Or they just don't show up. Or they try to get you fired. They swat you. They harass you. The reason I say it's a cult is because you could not define what they believe.
So Tim Pool hits on something a lot of us feel but don't say out loud. The modern left seems to have lost its anchor. Instead of relying on consistent values, the movement seems to shift often based on what's trending emotionally or socially. And it's telling when people like Elon Musk or Tulsi Gabbard, whose political views and actions did not suddenly shift over to the right, are painted as dangerous for asking uncomfortable questions. The fact that conservative platforms usually host liberal voices more says a lot and proves, at least for now, they are more open to ideological debate. And this doesn't mean I think conservatives are perfect, far from it, but they are not as quick to exile someone for stepping out of line generally. And that openness generally means that things turn to the better in our political practices.
Liberals have extremely high rates of mental illness relative to conservatives. Let's be real. Someone who's going to throw a firebomb at a Tesla and write "Long live Ukraine," they don't know what they're fighting for. They're mentally ill.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess what all we're saying is it's not like mentally ill right-wing people with guns have never done anything.
How many right-wing terror attacks have there been in the United States in the past 10 years?
The statement you made is a little bit overgeneralizing.
Well, I'm not trying to speak in absolutes. I'm speaking in generalities.
Yeah.
If you and my point is this: why is it that right now what we see is people who are mentally ill have like a 2-to-1 rate of leaning towards liberal ideology? Mm-hmm. Well, because the ideology itself is fractured, and the people like me or like you have abandoned it, or maybe not abandoned, but are no longer a part of it. So it's not so much a function of if you're a liberal, you are mentally ill. It's a function of the current iteration of the liberal social cohort is not conducive to a rational person's political ideology.
Tim's point about mental health on the left is pretty blunt, but backed up by polls younger liberals report more anxiety and depression than others. And the core of his argument isn't to mock mental health struggles. It's far from it. It's to question how a political movement that endorses fragility and victimhood can produce leaders or policies capable of stabilizing a society. By the way, if you watch this far, kindly hit the like button to help the YouTube algorithm. Now, on the flip side, the poll data might be shortchanged, as conservatives are reported to seek mental health checkups less regularly in comparison to liberals. I think it might be because they do also have a lot of responsibility and structure that keeps them grounded, and they are more grounded in things like family, I personally believe. Whether you think that's good or bad, just my opinion. So when a movement is emotionally all over the place, it is hard to build anything strong or lasting. The next clip is where we get things even more intense. Tim explains how modern conflict looks way different than what most people imagine.
If the states refuse to enforce, or immigration law, for instance, and I think immigration law is another point of advanced warfare, Trump should invoke the Insurrection Act to utilize the powers he has to the greatest degree to start enforcing a law that is not being done locally as he is allowed under the presidency. If I were to say Trump should go arrest the attorneys general from 3 states, would that be dictatorial?
I don't know enough about it.
The attorneys general are the head of law enforcement for each state.
Yeah, I know what an attorney general is, but I don't know what the context would be in American. You're clearly much better versed. Right, my job is just to ask you to try and understand what you're saying.
My point is that if Donald Trump were to do so, he'd be called a dictator for arresting top politicians in these states.
Yeah.
But in 3 states, the attorneys general have violated the Constitution and targeted innocent individuals in ways that is shocking to the American psyche. However, largely on the Democrat side, they're in favor of it regardless. These are people who clapped and cheered when Jordan Klepper on The Daily Show showed images of terror attacks. He literally called them acts of domestic terror, and they clapped and cheered for it.
Yeah.
Are we supposed to just say Trump should carry on as normal? No, Trump's going to have to use what we would describe as wartime president.
So this part stood out. There is really a kind of psychological warfare that's been happening under the surface, and it's definitely not our typical battlefield stuff. When local governments change policies because they're scared of violence, just like Vancouver restricted Tesla from its auto show, that is straight up coercion, and politics shouldn't work that way. When Tim says Trump needs to act like a wartime president, he doesn't mean tanks in the streets. He's saying that we're already in a kind of cultural, administrative, psychological war, and ignoring it means losing without fighting. It's like the rules of the game have changed, and we have to wake up and risk giving our country quietly to the extreme ideologies if we don't. Finally, the next part might be the most thought-provoking. He presents the idea that liberals have been bending the Constitution in their favor with agendas for a while now, and the conservatives ought to do the same. I don't know about it, but let's see what he had to say.
Would you then be happy for whoever is the Democrat president after that to do the things that you are now advocating that President Trump does? That's the only question.
I think that is a naive question.
Because?
That doesn't entertain the realities of history and everything that's ever happened. I would be unhappy with literally any amoral degenerate enforcing whatever laws that support amoral degeneracy. The average person would not understand what yes or no means morally if I were to give a simplistic answer.
Well, look, the point you're making is the left has violated the Constitution, therefore Donald Trump needs to invoke the Insurrection Act in order to...
Let me slow down. Let me slow you down there. My argument is an administrative war has begun as of 2015. When they accused Donald Trump of being a Russian spy, they accused the frontrunner for the Republican Party of being a traitor to his nation, for which the penalty is death, sought to impeach and imprison him, and obstructed an entire presidential administration. They arrested several people in his sphere who did nothing wrong. They destroyed the lives of people like Carter Page and Michael Flynn, who did nothing wrong. This is, I'm sorry, but for everything they accused Trump of doing, they started.
Now, this part might raise a few eyebrows, but it's one of the most revealing things Tim said. He argues that if the left are willing to bend or even break the rules to win, that the right sticks up to them no matter what, then setting itself up to lose. And obviously, he doesn't think the Constitution is some perfectly neutral document that's always been used to serve certain values. And when it's turned into a weapon against the people it's supposed to protect, then morality should take precedent. This bold claim reflects the current reality where political prosecutions target enemies, but violence is overlooked. But here's the danger. Once we start saying the Constitution, which has helped guide the country for over 2 centuries now, can be bent in the name of morality, the problem becomes who decides what's moral. That's the slippery slope that we definitely don't want to go on. And I have to disagree with Tim on that regard, though I don't believe he was being completely literal. Let me be clear about that. If anything, I think he was just being kind of hypothetical, but that's my opinion. And that's all for today's breakdown. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.